There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And that is by the great Maya Angelou. And welcome again to the Profitable Photographer. Just a reminder, I'm always looking for great guests. So if that's you, or if you have somebody you'd like me to reach out to, or you can send them my way, it's greatly appreciated. Okay, I'm excited to meet and share Zoe Martin with you today. She is the founder of Moments by Zoe Martin. It's a luxury legacy storytelling experience that preserves voices, faces, and love stories of the people we value most. Before losing her sister to Christina to breast cancer, she captured her sister's spoken words. When she was too weak to write them, they became her final message to her child. And that moment changed everything for Zoe. And now she helps families do the same to document what matters most in film, custom portraits, and so much more. And I'm really excited to find out all the so much more. And of course, Zoe, I'm so sad to hear about your sister. My sister is everything to me, and I can't imagine what that has been for you. All right, so hello.
Hello, Lucy. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah. So tell me in a little brief synopsis about your photography background before this more unfolded for you.
Yeah. Well, I was a mom with a camera, and I started out as a newborn photographer before I got hired by a photography studio that had been well established 15 years in. I was there for 5 years before I moved from West Texas to East Texas. I started my own photography business. So previously at the studio, I photographed everything, whatever was on my schedule, that's what I photographed. But when I went out on my own, I decided that I wanted to niche, and I did personal branding and headshots. And then the pandemic happened. I started learning video, and we moved again to the Dallas area, which is where I am now. And that's where I started here was personal brand and headshots again. And then I transitioned to what I do now after I lost my sister Christina.
Mm. How long ago was that?
It was Christmas Eve of 2023.
Ugh. And right in the middle of the pandemic, and oh gosh, yeah,
Yep, it
yeah,
was really tough.
yeah. So where did this idea of doing this, first of all, for her, come from?
Well, it was kind of an accident. Um, when we were together, there were four sisters, and one of our sisters had created some custom stationery for Christina. There were
Mm,
12 envelopes and there were 12 letters. So Christina had one child, my niece Caitlin, and she was going to write letters to Caitlin because she knew she was going to be missing milestones like college graduation, getting married, her first baby, and things. Well, when she was in hospice, she asked me to be by her side. So I lived with her for 2 weeks. And in a moment of clarity, she said, Zoe, go get the letters.
mm,
And I was thrilled because I forgot about the letters. But, here I was going to be the first person to be able to see them and read them. And I opened them up, and then my heart broke. She
mm,
hadn't written any of them.
mm,
So I'm grabbing pens. I don't know what color ink and what color flow. And, I looked at her and I realized she was too weak to
mhm,
write the letters. And so I took out my cell phone and I recorded the last messages that she ever sent to Caitlin. But a few days afterwards, she passed away. And after the celebration of life, I took those video recordings and the letters to Caitlin, and I said it wasn't my place to write them, but I gave her the stationery because my sister had intended to do it. And that intention, what do you do with the intention when nothing actually comes from that?
mhm,
Except these videos. So if I would have known sooner that she hadn't written the letters, I could have photographed, or I could have filmed her stories with intention and with clarity and, not with the oxygen tank reverberating in the background.
right.
She would have had all her hair, she would have
Mhm,
had clear messaging. And wow, I'm getting hot just thinking about it.
Yeah.
We missed that opportunity, but
Yeah.
now I get to do it for others in her honor.
Hmm. I think I learned this when my dad passed. Uh, there's there's a wonderful teacher about the stages of grief, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Are you familiar with her
I'm not.
work? So it's like denial, bargaining, depression, anger, and then acceptance. But what she missed, and maybe if I read the whole book, it was in there, was regret. And when my dad passed, there were all these things that, when you mentioned that, it just reminded me of the things I wish I could go back and have do-overs. Spent more time just taking him. He had Parkinson's, dementia, but just taking him out and going to get an ice cream together or things like that. It was such a stressful time for our family that I wasn't thinking about those little sweet moments I could have created extra memories because we knew he was on his way. He had a short time left with us, whether it was in his mind or his body. So out of that regret for you came this idea, right?
Right. That
Right.
was where it was first planted.
Yeah. So tell me about it. Tell me more about what you do for people.
Yeah. Well, let me finish the story of
Oh,
taking
okay.
those letters
Sorry.
and the videos to my niece because it gives a little more context here.
Hmm.
So we have photographs, right? We have albums of on our phones. We have digital thumbnails all over our phones, hundreds or thousands of them even, and they're representing what's happening in our lives or who, we've been with. But this video, the videos were my sister trying to express what she wanted to in just the few moments that we were able to record her. But what was really significant is when I hit the play button, their dog Tiki was at the foot of the bed. And as soon as the dog heard my sister's voice, she whipped her head around. Where is
Oh,
she?
oh,
And my niece and I lost it, right?
yeah, of
Because you
course.
recognize voices,
Hmm.
right? Use the expression and everything. It's so meaningful and so much more valuable than even the written word. How many times do we read something and it's misconstrued, right? We didn't catch the right tone or we got it and read it wrong. And then, emotions go out of control and things.
Hmm.
Where if you actually have the video, the recording, and someone is saying it in the proper tone, they're saying it with the expression and everything. Like to me, it's so invaluable to have that kind of a story. So, not long after Christina passed away, I got a phone call to service a family with an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. Are you
Hmm.
familiar with them?
Yes, yes.
So, I went to the family and I found out then the baby was almost full term. It was an unexpected loss, and there was an older sibling. The older sibling knew baby was coming, but they weren't going to allow the older sibling to meet the baby. And then, uncontrollably, tears started streaming down my face. So I was very grateful that the nurse was standing between the family and I. They did not see me lose it. I pulled myself together. I have serviced the family, but when I got back in my car, that was when I decided I needed to find a way to honor Christina and her legacy. And so I contacted headquarters and said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I will
Hmm.
continue to be a community volunteer, continue to raise awareness, but I can no longer be an affiliate photographer. And that was when I decided to donate back to the Bridge Breast Network here in Dallas in honor of Christina every time I do a legacy experience.
So tell us about Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. I have had an interview with the head of it and another photographer that is very involved. So just for people that might be interested, wonder what that is, because it's a wonderful organization. So fill us in on that.
Absolutely. It's an international organization. I've been a volunteer for nearly 10 years. I've known about them for 12 years. Sandy Putsch did a class on Creative Live, and at the very
Mhm.
end of the class, she spoke. So she's one of the founders of the organization.
Right.
She told the story of how it started. And I thought, wow, what incredible human beings who can walk into a room with a family who are really struggling emotionally and be able to provide them with remembrance photography. I could never do that. And so during the pandemic, so a
So
couple
hold
years
on.
after that, I signed
So,
up. Yeah,
so sorry, maybe you were continuing. Um, but just in a nutshell, it's an organization that takes that when a family has a child whose passing is imminent, babies particularly, or even has already passed, they call on photographers who go to the hospital, set up a really simple lighting situation, and create these beautiful, tender moments with this child so that the photographer or the parents and family have something beautiful to hold in their heart and visually. So, okay. So
yeah.
back to you okay, so continue. So you said
So
you couldn't do
Sandy
that?
has
Go ahead.
right. I didn't think that I could do that, but I became a community volunteer. So there's multiple ways that you
Ah,
can volunteer with them. There's affiliate photographers, which requires an application. You have to send in images that prove that you're a professional, whether or not you have like a certification that you're a professional. The images need to represent that you're qualified to be in a room with a family and are able to gift them professional portraits. There's an assistant photographer role. There's a digital retouching artists. There's community volunteers, and there's area coordinators. There's the dispatcher. The dispatcher can be anywhere. They don't have to be available in their specific city. They just have to be available like a lot, a lot, like 7 a.m. I think to like 10 p.m.
mhm,
for phone calls because you just never know.
right.
And the images they're taken there with the family, but we retouch them so they're black and white or sepia tone because if they're in color, it can be a little unsettling for some people to view them that way. And so
Hmm.
we make them heirloom quality, and then they also receive an album of
Oh,
the photos as well.
beautiful.
That's a gift. There's so
Yeah.
many different sponsors with Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep,
Hmm.
so it's a beautiful gift for families.
Yeah. I remember uh, I used to go to Sandy Puch's events, and that tells me I need to check in with her and see if she wants to be on my show. She did wonderful classes. Anyway, so okay, so back to you decided you couldn't do it, but you had this idea to do the uh, luxury legacy
Experiences.
storytelling
Yes.
experiences. And the idea was blossoming from there. So tell us more about that,
Well,
what you did.
one of the things when we knew that my sister was going to hospice is all of us were going to be together. And she wasn't able to leave. I mean, she was in a hospital bed. And so I had a photographer scheduled to come to her house and we were going to have a professional portrait taken together. But when the youngest sister saw Christina, Stephanie just, she was not prepared to see her in that condition. And she looked
Mhm.
so unwell. And I contacted the photographer and said, we don't want to remember her that way. And that's not how she wants to be remembered. So we missed our opportunity to have a professional portrait done. We hadn't had one in over 30 years. And so that's where the part of the legacy experiences is multi-generational portraits. And we offer painted portraits because I feel like it's very important for people to have the tangible photograph. And you know that
Hmm.
versus the digital file because
Absolutely.
that's something that can be passed on from generation to generation.
Okay, so um, tell me about the structure. So somebody says, "Oh, I want to do that." Um, what do you offer them? So if someone's listening that thinks, "I'd like to start doing that, but I need some step-by-step info on that." So can you give us, uh, break it down specifically about
Sure.
what the program is like, what you offer families?
there's such a big variety of things that fits under this legacy niche. And when, for example, a family contacted me knowing that I photograph events, so a 100th birthday party was going to be coming up last year. And I asked them if they had ever been photographed as their generational, and they hadn't. So there were four generations. We did the full experience, which includes professional hair and makeup, helping them choose what to wear, you filming or not filming, sorry, photographing the individual families as units, and then the entire four generations together. And we had the created artwork as well from that session. So you're thinking about designing for the space and making sure that what they wear is going to be conducive to the whole experience and the design. So helping them choose what to wear. So then I photographed the birthday, but between the multi-generational portrait session and photographing the birthday party, then I filmed the Mima in her home for about an
Mm.
hour, which was such a sweet treat. Oh my goodness, she was pretty clear in her memories. And so we were able to record her, and so that they were able to show that at the birthday party celebration. So it was kind of like everything, almost everything that I offer.
Mm. Um, my my grandparents, they did a video. So my grandparents, I was not related to either one. My mother, it was her stepmother after her mother passed. And then when her father passed, when she was an adult, my grandmother remarried. So I had these two wonderful grandparents who were not related to me, but he had a family of four daughters, and they did this. This is going back at least 20 years, but I've never seen it. I I've maybe I should contact them because they have it in, video VHS form, and they went to their cute little house and, listened to them make their jokes because they were both there's this Oregon kind of humor called spoonerisms, and they were
Oh,
the king and queen. I don't know. Have you ever heard of spoonerisms?
I
So if
haven't.
you Google it, you'll find it's a thing. It's like twisting words backwards. The only one I remember is that they would, instead of starting a fire, they would fart a stire, things like that. Anyway, so how do you preserve these in a way that then the family can be sure anyone that wants it, wants to see it, wants to enjoy it, has it? Is there some
I'm
form?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because as soon as you said VHS tape, I thought, oh no, who has a VHS tape player? I actually do have one right
I do
here,
too.
but not very many people still have those around, right? So digitizing the files is one of the things I would highly encourage you to talk over with them. And
Mhm.
you may have someone locally who can digitize them for you, or there's an organization I'm considering becoming an ambassador for called Forever.
Mm.
So forever.com will digitize them for you, and then you can have them securely stored on their server.
Wow.
The neat thing about Forever is that you pay in and a portion of that goes into a trust fund. So it's guaranteed to be secure for your lifetime plus 100 years. So
Wow.
that is really important to me because like you said, for longevity, the best thing to do is to have it securely stored in some that is going to have it backed up for a good amount of time
And then
so
you
that
can
you
just
have that option.
share that out with family members, so that they can keep the records of it for themselves, or if they forget, maybe some other family member says, yeah, I still have that. So yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things when you work with me is I create an account for you and I securely store it there. And then I ask you or encourage you to give that link to someone else because you just never know, right? It's better to
Right.
have someone else have the access to it as well.
Right. Right. So does somebody have to have somebody old or terminal to do this? I'm asking a stupid question, knowing
It's
your
not.
answer.
It's not a stupid question because a lot of people they do get hung up, especially when I explain that it was because my sister passed away, and so they think about this as an end of life or a hospice type of situation. I'm actually writing a book right now where I'm trying to encourage people to think on the other end. So, for example, my children, they are all grown adults now, but when they were little, for 14 years of their lives, well, my daughter, so 14, 12, and 11 years of their lives, we read bedtime stories together. So we would all hop into one of their beds or mine, and we would read a bedtime story, age appropriate, as the years went on.
Mhm.
And we then would exchange a personal I love you. They each had an individual I love you that we exchanged. In those 14 years, we have zero photos and no videos documenting any of those times,
Mm,
which now is mind-boggling to me because we did it for so long. I could have very easily handed my phone or camcorder or something to my husband and asked him to film that, or I could have set it up on a tripod. I just didn't think about it. And
sure.
now the time has passed. So now I offer what's called a day in the life, where I
Mm,
will come to your house and we can film something like that, some a meaningful tradition or a routine, whether it's Saturday morning pancakes or it's a birthday, something where we can do this every year. We can do this every 5 or 10 years, something because you just never know. And that's I can't stress it enough that this is not a later thing. This is a now thing.
right. And what we do know for sure is those children are not going to be children anymore. That, my little nephew, I do have a beautiful picture of him at about 8 months with his mom. I have a lot of pictures, but I have a, a, a larger portrait. And I look at that and I think, oh my gosh, he's 6. That baby's gone. I can't, he's not, he's a little dynamite and he's not a cuddler with me in general because he doesn't see me that much. He loves me. I
Mhm.
get to FaceTime with him and such, but every 6 months, children are somebody else almost at least every year or two. So yes, we're guaranteed that life is going to change and that little babe, oh my gosh, I'm thinking how much also it would mean to me as an adult if there were those films of us.
Yep.
I still need to find someplace to safely do it, but I have some, maybe I have some little movies that my dad took when I was a baby. He didn't take many photos of me because I was the third child. And also, I think he got this new, uh, you know, movie camera. And I don't think I've seen them since maybe I was a teenager, but I do have it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
uh, do you help people find those kinds of things and incorporate? Tell me about like the excavation of other treasures and how you
Yeah,
use
I'm
those.
so glad. So glad that you asked that because I was just on a call with a group of personal historians. And so I'm happy to connect you. Let's say, for example, you're uncomfortable being in front of the camera. I get that 100%. I'm very uncomfortable in front of the camera myself. So
You're doing
either I can
great
help
though.
make you comfortable. I can help make you comfortable because I know how that feels, which is part of the reason that I do the professional hair and makeup to start. But I can connect you with someone who's local to you, or I can come to you wherever you are. But recording your legacy, it can be done in so many different ways. You can have a ghostwriter, you can have memoirs written, you can write your own biography. There's people who just, I also do oral histories. And so if you didn't want to be filmed, we could just record your story so that at least your voice and your expression are still coming across.
Hmm.
And there's something else that you said, something that the video, filming. There was a family recently who contacted me from another state. They wanted to have the son interview the father and just have me there to film that. And so that's something that I did for the first time on Memorial Day weekend. And I mean, there's huge opportunities. A family who is having a book written about their World War II veteran father asked me if I would photograph the memorabilia that they had, their
Mm,
duffel bag, the bayonet, his World War II medals, because you can't just put those in a scanner. And they also
right.
need to be high resolution photographs to go in a book. And so that was something that I did as well. So that, and like I said, there's so many different levels to this. And the more that I meet people and can I do this? If I can't do it, I will help you find someone who can.
Good stuff. I love it. So, how do you monetize? Now, I can clearly understand how to monetize a four-generation family portrait. Over my shoulder, if you're watching on YouTube, is my last entire family portrait before my mom passed. And before this new baby, this my niece, who's the mother, was 16 or 17 in that. And so that was 10 years ago. Um, anyway, so just in case, I know it's not clear, but I'm in there with darker hair. So how do you, are there levels? Like, how do you approach this in terms of packages or options and such? Because that's, it I can see that it could range from a modest investment to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on what you're doing. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's exactly you're spot on. For example, I was at a senior living community this morning, and I'm offering something called an over 80 project, which, oh my goodness, I believe it's Craig Edwards is a photographer and the Professional Photographers of America who in the magazine he talked about this over 80 project, and I reached
Mm,
out to him and I said, "Hey, I would really be interested in doing this, but I don't want to step on anybody's toes. You know, if this is something that you're wanting to do and like keep it, that's your thing. I would completely understand. I'm just asking if you would be comfortable with me carrying that forward." And at first, he was hesitant, but before we ended the conversation, he's like, "I want you to do this. Like, please go
mm.
ahead and do it." And I said, "Okay, you have to understand if I do it, other people are going to see it as well. And this could be something that turns into something like the 40 over
40 over 40
40
image.
project,
Yeah.
right? Right. So the over 80 project is the idea that we're getting people, we're filming, sorry, photographing people who are over 80 years old with a photograph of themselves of a younger time, right? So you're
Hmm.
taking a three-quarter body shot and then they're holding their photograph of their younger self, but we're converting it to sepia tone so that everything is, the same colors. And the lighting, it's important for the lighting to be just right. For like older hands are very, aged, and you want to do them as much favors as you can. And so lighting it properly, anyway. So Craig is going to allow me to do that. So like for the senior services or the senior living industry, it would be kind of like a school picture day essentially, where I would come in and I would photograph them, throughout a 10-minute, 15-minute increments. And so those would be less expensive. That's probably like one of the lowest price points because I want to be able to have the family appreciate those, because this is we're running out of time kind of situation. But then yeah, like painted portraits are into the thousands easily. We do the portrait session, full experience, and then the images are printed on a giclée canvas, and then they're hand painted. The framing is designed specifically to go in your home and to fit a specific, wall in your home. So there's a huge variety, and of course, filming, is thousands.
So, so what range is starting with the over 80? So what would they
Mhm.
get and about what price point? I know different parts of the world because this has been listened to in over 100 countries, and there's seniors in all of them. But about what range and what would people receive for that if you're having senior picture day?
Yeah, yeah, that's a cute way to say it. So I present this to senior living communities, and right now we're kind of onboarding with what this is going to look like. So At the moment, what I'm telling them is that it's going to be like a 10 or 15-minute schedule. I'll come in for one day and we'll have people sign up to come in. And then there's nothing like there's no bells and whistles as far as me guiding them on what to wear or any hair and makeup experience included in this. So they're just coming in with the photograph of themselves. They need to have a printed portrait, and then the lighting and background is all set up. And the senior living home will have access to give, and again, because we're still figuring this out,
Hmm.
the digital file along with a printed. I think it's super important. Again, a matted mounted portrait. So it'll be an 8 by 10 mat. It'll be a 4 by 7, 4 by 6, sorry. I'm thinking 5 by 7 and getting confused there. Image printed in that, a 5 by 7. So then they have the ability, if they wanted to share it on social media, it's up to the families, however they want to do that. Right now, I'm looking at a price point of $30 a person. And then that would be an opportunity for, I have once worked with a senior living facility where I did school picture day.
Hmm.
And what I did was not the sepia toned and not the photograph. It was just the people coming in and me photographing them. And then I made a collage for the senior living community where it had the images of the residents and then their logo. And so that's something that the a facility could have, for social media sharing or whatever.
So,
Did that answer your question?
yes, so you're not getting rich on this idea. $30,
Not
dollars,
on that, no.
$30, but I could see how it could be an intro with those families um, to think, oh, I'd like to do more. Or maybe you include a coupon or not like a cheesy coupon, but a gift certificate for a family session with each one that goes to the family or something. So, okay, so we've got the um, in the world of some photography these days, they call them the minis. So we've got that angle, and then we've got the portraiture angle, and then like how would if I was like I'm thinking of having you do so my niece and the baby's going to be at my sister's. Maybe I could bring my brother up and do some interview and some filming and the portrait. So how would you, if I was like, what kind of investment am I looking at for that? How do you approach that? How do you talk about that? Because that can be, you know, such a hard to get that down to like do you have packages like uh what would I imagine the investment once I was sold on the idea, I loved you, I'm thinking about it, I'm excited, and now, what are the options beyond having a nice family portrait session? Does that make sense? Like,
I think so. Let me see if I answer it and we're not on track, then correct me. But so we've had our phone consultation. I understand your family's all going to be together. And so I want to know the professional hair and makeup. Like it sounds like there's three adults and a child, a young child. And so I always encourage both my men and my women to experience the hair and makeup because we all have
okay,
skin,
okay,
right? So news
okay.
anchors.
We're that's not my question. So I'm
Okay.
sure you've got a price to come in and do a family portrait session. If I said I
Okay.
want to do video, I want to uh, get some legacy things. We've got some antiques we'd like photographed. We'd like, you're more than a portrait session. How do you approach that financially, those additional
Gotcha.
services?
Okay. So if we were photographing items, memorabilia, maybe the china that's in the china cabinet and the vases that your grandmother had, then we're talking about a half day or a day rate because it's, involved. I'm going to have to pull items out and what have you.
Hmm.
So that is going to be separate costs from the actual multi-generational portrait, separate from the filming. And so there's base points For example, multi-generational portrait's going to start at 1,290, and then there's an image credit that's included in that. With filming, the filming is going to start at 7,500, and I'm highly considering raising that price because it is so much more involved than
Mhm.
people have any clue. An hour of filming could take 4 or more hours to process.
Right. That's what I wanted to know. So,
There you go.
yeah. Let's see. Okay. Well, keep sharing, and then that thought will come in my head. I'm going to pause because it was a good thought, and I don't want to lose it. If I can figure out how to pause with the new. All right. It didn't come back to me after I paused here, so we'll just move on. So,
Okay.
marketing. Oh, that was a question. Ding, ding, ding. All right. So, how are you getting the word out about not the family portraits? I've got out of 360 some episodes, how to have a luxury family portrait experience is something that we've talked about. It's always great to talk about more, but it's the how do you promote the I'm going to do this family legacy for you. I'm available, and it can include interviews and much much more. Uh, so how do you promote that? How do you market that?
Well, it's been very interesting. I'm a part of several networking. Well, I attend several networking events. Of course, I'm
Mhm.
in Dallas, and so there's a lot of in-person opportunities, but there's also a lot of virtual events. And because my services, I'll take them wherever you need me to go. If you've got a lake house in, another country, another state, I'm happy to go there. But if you wanted to travel out of the country because you've got family overseas, I'm happy to do that as well. And so I do a lot of virtual networking. I'm finding that building relationships with people and having them say, "Oh, do you do this?" I'm floored. How many people, when I tell them what I offer, they will feed me ideas that I hadn't considered doing before. And so I'm um, networking, building relationships locally, building them globally. And then I've co-authored a book that's going to publish June 30th. I'm writing my own book. I'm hoping to have published before Q1, no later than Q1 of next year. And getting on podcasts. I speak locally, with senior
Mhm.
living industry. I connect with like financial planners, estate planners, people who are already talking to people who are thinking about their legacy because this is really it's your emotional inheritance that you're being able to pass down through portraits and videos.
I love that. I just had an idea. Can I share?
Yeah.
So, funeral homes, when people like um, after my dad passed, my mom bought real estate for my brother and I, in case we want to live out eternity next to them. And my mom did some of her own planning. And she was of sound mind, and uh, she was only 70. Oh my gosh, she was the same age as me. Um, and if how to connect that and have that be an offer at um, is it called a funeral home? I guess it is. That there's the mortuaries and things because they
Okay.
do a lot of pre-planning with people. Like they're big
Yeah.
on pre-selling, get everything arranged. And while they're doing that, if you have a connection, they might say, "Hey, we offer this. We have this fabulous company. If you're interested in, we're busy preserving certain parts of your life and your death, but here's something cool that you can do now while everybody's great because you start thinking at a certain point about your own legacy. So I have heard, it's been years ago, but there was a speaker who one of his main ways to market family portraits was through mortuaries. And he did beautiful portraits of the family because a lot of times the mortuary funeral home is a family business. And
Yeah,
so, and they have beautiful portraits on the wall. And that was one of the main ways that he got the big family groups. So there's a thought for you. It's been back in
there
the
is a
back of my
thought.
mind, waiting for an opportunity to share. So,
Well, and it's interesting too, mentioning that reminds me one of the things that we can do is living eulogies. Um, I worked for a floral shop two different times, once when I was a teenager and then once not that long ago. So I was delivering flowers, and you would think people receiving flowers, oh my goodness, what a happy moment, right? They're going to always be excited. They're so happy to receive flowers from someone. They're
right.
colorful, they're fragrant. But then I made the realization that 85% of the floral deliveries were going to
Mhm.
funeral homes. And then I was like, wow, why do we wait? Why they can't appreciate them, they can't smell them, they don't know that they're coming, they don't get to see them. And this is the same idea for me with legacy videos is, when you're sharing your story and you're able to tell your own story in your words with your expression and your tone and that seeing the smile creep across your face or hearing that laugh, like that's a gift. And if we wait until we're almost gone. And a lot of times this is another reason that I try and get people to back up, not think of this as end of life or a hospice type of situation. My sister was only 40 years old.
Right.
She was only 40. And so, and now I lay me down to sleep. Those babies hardly had any time at all. And so to me, like I cannot stress enough the importance of this is a now thing. This is not a later thing. This is not just for your grandparents or your parents. This is something that you need to do.
I love that. I love that. When you talk about the voice of people that we love, family members, when I was packing up my mom's house to move her to uh, a boarding care, I found a cassette.
Mhm.
And when I went off to college, my parents drove me, and my brother was with me, um, all the way from San Diego to Eugene, Oregon, in a Volkswagen. And my sister was in Australia. So, and this
Mhm.
was before you could really afford many phone calls internationally. So we recorded a cassette all the way up and we visited all kinds of relatives, great grandparents, two sets of grandparents, the ones I told you about, and then the ones I was related to, my dad's favorite cousin and his wife. Um, uh, and we joked, we were a funny family. So, while we were recording, sometimes we sang. And having, gosh, I'm getting teary. Having my great grandparents, because I had two sets of grandparents, a set of great grandparents, and one great grandmother. The family had children young. I think my grandma was 18 when my dad was born. So, but listening to especially my great grandparents, who I've kind of had lost the essence of them in my memory, brought it all back. And the funny grandparents, the spoonerism things, they made some jokes. And yeah, so wouldn't it have been nice if my mother, when she was of sound mind and we were going through this, had said, you know what? We have that cassette when, my kids were teenagers. And then we mailed it to, I don't know how we had a copy because we mailed it to the grandparents and mailed it to my sister and somehow it came back to us. But yeah, the sound of the voice, and then now that we have video, to see them, in cameras, there's so much more potential for those treasures that we can pass on. So I was thinking,
That is such a great idea.
yeah,
Recording that just on a trip.
yeah, yeah. Can you believe four of us and our luggage in a Volkswagen on a, I don't know, 1,500 mile or so trip? But times are different then. I'm sure we must have tied something to the roof. Well, this has been so inspiring and delightful to talk to you, Miss Zoe, and I'm glad we had the chance to delve into this. And I just love how something that happens to us can inspire something that can be a joy and a treasure and a comfort to other people. I'm sure you would have liked much more of your sister than you have, but you have that. And then now you're taking that and sharing that out with the world. And one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because hopefully there are people getting inspired like crazy from this conversation and your heart for it and such. So I have
Thank
two questions. I know
you.
that you have a special gift for us. So I'm going to ask you what that is and how they can find it. And also, if someone wants to contact you, where would they do that? So, first of all, the
Excellent.
gift.
Yeah, the Emotional Inheritance Starter Kit will give you ideas and suggestions on what you can do to start filming your own story or to film someone else that you love. I encourage this, children even. Children have incredible, unbounded ideas in their mind. Ask them how
Mhm.
old they think you are when they're little, and they'll give you some astronomical number. So,
Yeah.
um, documenting everyone, anyone who is close to you, even if it's just a couple of minutes. So that kit is a download that's going to be available in the show notes. And to contact me, you can find me all over social media. I do not do TikTok, but almost everything else. The Zoe Martin.
TheZoeMartin.com. So, in case someone's not looking at the show notes, it's thezoemartin.com/starter-kit-emotional-inheritance. So, thank you for that. Okay, so parting thought. If there was either something that you might be like, oh man, this was important and I didn't mention that, or just a thought to leave us with.
Sure. I really want to stress the significance of this being in honor of my sister Christina, and that the Bridge Breast Network here is a local Dallas nonprofit. It gives resources to individuals because both men and women can get breast cancer. And so it's something that's close to my heart. And I think if you have a story and something that's pulling at your heartstrings, I think a lot of times people will try and create a nonprofit rather than giving back to a nonprofit or partnering with a
Mm,
nonprofit in some way. I just want to encourage you to consider giving back and making that a partnership somehow so that it's not giving giver fatigue, because man, there's so many nonprofits that are already available who are probably spotlighting exactly something that you're wanting to give back to. So find it and make your heart happy.
I love that. Well, thank you so, 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 so much. Um, it's just been really special to get to know you and hear your story and how you're making it a legacy for your sister too, to, benefit many, many, many people with the journey that she was on and you were on with her. So thank you for being a guest.
I appreciate the time that you took to get to hear my story and I get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Okay, see ya.
Definitely. Okay.
Well, I'm back. Had my goodbyes with Miss or Mrs. Zoe Martin, and I'm not sure if I can really summarize other than it's a wonderful idea to find ways to document people's lives so that they can hang on to the treasure that is someone that they loved. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I love her idea that she's going beyond the value of printed portraits, which I'm big on. That's a big legacy um, product, but videos, mementos, hearing stories, all of the things that we all, I think, if we've loved someone, we wish we had that if they're not with us anymore. So um, I loved that she is figuring out or has figured out both a way to do like a group event at a senior center and other ways to document people's lives. So that's all I have in my summary today. And thank you so much again, Lucy, dumascoaching.com, Lucy with an I, and sending out a big old summer heart for you. Bye.